I always wondered why people believe that movie stars, couturiers, singers now do their own fragrances. I mean, it's always been a mystery to me that this big fat lie is going through, is happening. One of my prime ideas was to reveal to the public that these guys are actually behind making fragrances. And they are the best perfumers in the world. They are the artists that are responsible for all the big fragrance blockbusters on the planet. And I have just asked them to do the fragrances that they would like to do if they had all the freedom in the world. If they didn't have all these marketing people sort of limiting them in terms of time, in terms of money, and with their market tests. So I have given them that freedom that allows them to treat fragrances like works of art. This, for instance, Kernel Flower. This fragrance epitomizes what Editions De Parfums is about. I asked Dominique Ropion to work on the idea of tuberose. There's a fabulous historical tuberose fragrance which is called Fracas. Since Fracas was made in 1948, everybody making a tuberose fragrance has been copying Fracas. Our idea was not to copy Fracas, but to go back to nature, using the best technologies that are available today and that were not available in those days, to create a new fragrance, a tuberose which is very true to nature, but that can also sit very well on someone's skin. We used the 18 months that were necessary to put that together. I smelled 690 trials, and there's such an amount of natural tuberose absolute in this fragrance, and this total freedom that I gave to Dominique is what really makes our fragrances so special. One of the things that makes Editions De Parfums specific vis-à-vis other brands is that other brands try to tackle every customer with one single fragrance, which is supposed to please everybody. And we are trying to tackle each individual with 15 different fragrances that are extremely different from one another. To make that possible, we have very good experts working in each of our stores, and also that's why we work with a very small amount of department stores where we have very highly trained people. Now, another way of showing the fragrances is to use our smelling booths. I created the smelling booths because I was puzzled by the fact that people buy fragrances without knowing what they will be smelling when wearing them. Indeed, when you smell a fragrance on a small piece of paper, it sort of gives you a vague idea. It's not like, when you buy a garment, you try it on, you look at yourself in the mirror, and then you make that final decision. In fact, the usual way of buying fragrances forces you to buy something that you don't know much about. The fragrance advisor takes the fragrances that they think are right for you, and they spray one spritz in one booth. They close the door, and then they reopen that small door, and then you will have to poke your head in, and you will smell that fragranced air, and you will sort of have the impression of following someone wearing that fragrance. So it will give you a very good picture of what you will be smelling like. There are to fragrances what mirrors are to garments, in a way. We use a fan as an exhaust to empty the booths, and as the booths are round, the air circulates in a Venturi effect, and it cleans them. One thing that I find a bit amusing in this business is how people talk about Orientals and Chypre and Cologne, and most of these people not knowing what on earth they're talking about. I try to classify fragrances in a much more simple, down-to-earth way. Fresh, dense, sweet, and bitter. These are adjectives that people use to define what they're like. And if people are honest with themselves and know what sort of fragrance they're like, just by looking at this diagram, they're going to be able to understand which fragrance in the collection is the one that they should theoretically be comfortable with. Perfumers keep their fragrance in refrigerators so that they can compare them from one day to the other, because fragrance evolve from one day to the other, and the only way to sort of keep them still is to keep them in a cool place. Fragrance is a bit like wine. It does evolve. So as I'm showing a part of this inner world of perfumery, I thought that I might as well take some elements from that inner world, like the refrigerators. You don't have to keep them in refrigerators, but we have enough respect for these fragrances to keep them really pristine and not to have them cooked under the lights. In a way, those refrigerators can be compared to humidors. Basically, some brands are selling cigarettes, we are selling good cigars. These people, perfumers, who are chemists, artists at the same time, are sort of, magicians to a certain way. Incredibly low profile, very humble, silent, dedicated. And I was very, very impressed by that mixture. These people are behind all the big blockbusters and they were not known. So when I knew my trade, I had this idea of showing them to the world and giving them that freedom, that total freedom to make their dream fragrances and to